The morning sun of Prime rose slowly over the military academy, casting long purple shadows across the training grounds. Hundreds of alien cadets walked between the tall silver buildings, their different species mixing together like colors in a painting. Some had scales, some had fur, some had skin that changed color with their moods, but they all wore the same gray uniform of the Galactic Coalition. In the main mess hall, a group of young cadets sat around a circular table. Their breakfast trays were pushed aside as they talked and laughed loudly. At the center of the group sat a tall with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that gleamed with amusement. He was popular among the cadets. His family had produced military officers for 12 generations. He believed this made him better than most. Beside him sat a young female with smooth green scales and a quick tongue. She was smart and ambitious, but she often followed wherever led. The others at the table were a mix of more and a few. They all listened as spoke. "Did you hear the news?" said with a grin. "The humans applied again to send cadets to the academy." The table erupted in laughter. "Again," said, "how many times will they try? Do they not understand the word band?" "Apparently not," replied. "Their tiny brains cannot process rejection. They keep coming back like pests." A cadet named shook his large head. His species was known for their size and strength, and also for their slow and careful thinking. "I have read about humans," he said. "They live such short lives, barely 100 years. What can they possibly learn in such little time?" "Nothing useful," said. "That is why they were banned. They are too fragile, too emotional. They panic under pressure and make everything worse." Stood up from her seat and put her hands on her chest. She made her eyes go wide and let her mouth hang open. "Oh no," she said in a high voice. "There is danger. I am so scared. My heart is beating too fast. I think I will cry now." The cadets laughed harder, sat back down, pleased with herself. "I heard they actually sent observers here once," another cadet said. "A few years ago, some kind of exchange program." "Yes," said, "and it was a disaster. That is why they were banned. The humans failed so badly that the coalition sealed all the records. No one is even allowed to talk about what happened." "Probably ran away crying," said. "Probably got everyone killed," added. The laughter continued, but none of them noticed the figure standing near the doorway. Senior Commander had been listening for several minutes. He was an older, his blue skin faded to gray with age. He had served in the coalition military for over 60 years. He had seen things these young cadets could not imagine. He said nothing to them. He simply turned and walked away, his mind already composing a request to the Academy archives. That evening, an announcement appeared on every cadet's personal screen. All students were required to attend a special session in the main viewing hall the next morning. Attendance was mandatory. The subject was listed as tactical analysis of a classified incident. Read the announcement and smiled. "This should be entertaining," he told. "Perhaps they will finally show us what those pathetic humans did wrong." "I hope so," said. "I could use a good laugh before midterm examinations." They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, over 300 cadets filled the viewing hall. The room was designed like a theater, with rising rows of seats facing a massive screen. The lights were dim, and quiet conversations filled the air. And his friends sat near the front. They wanted the best view of whatever failure was about to be displayed. Senior Commander walked onto the small stage before the screen. His face showed no expression. He waited until the room fell silent. "Good morning," he said. "Today you will watch footage that has been classified for 2 years. It documents an incident involving a coalition survey vessel called the Wandering Light. By special authorization from High Command, this footage is now being released for educational purposes." He paused and looked across the rows of young faces. "Some of you have opinions about humans," he continued. "I have heard these opinions expressed in the mess hall, in the training yards, in the dormitories. Today, you will have the opportunity to see for yourselves what humans are capable of. Leaned over to, finally, he whispered, proof that we were right about them. Pressed a button on his control pad. The footage you are about to see is unedited. It contains scenes of combat and death. If anyone wishes to leave, you may do so now. No one moved. Very well, said. Pay close attention. There will be questions afterward. The lights went completely dark. The massive screen flickered to life. The first image showed the interior of a spacecraft. It was a standard coalition survey vessel, designed for exploration and research. The camera moved through corridors where aliens of different species worked at their stations. Then the camera focused on three figures standing together near an observation window. They were humans. Felt his smile grow wider. They looked so ordinary, so unimpressive. Two males and one female, all of them smaller than every other species on the ship. They wore simple gray jumpsuits with Earth emblems on their shoulders. They carried no weapons. They held no rank. Text appeared at the bottom of the screen identifying them. Sergeant Danny Cole, Specialist Maria Vance, Medic First Class Marsh. Look at them, whispered. They look lost. Nodded in agreement. On the screen, the human called Danny Cole was speaking to the ship's captain, a large named. The audio was clear. Sir, Danny said, the readings from that moon are unusual. I recommend we proceed with caution. Captain made a dismissive gesture with his massive hand. Your recommendation is noted, human, but you are here to observe, not to advise. We will investigate as planned. Danny Cole nodded slowly. His face showed no anger, but something in his eyes changed, something that the cadets watching did not yet understand. The ship began its descent toward the moon below. In the viewing hall, 300 alien cadets watched with amusement and anticipation. They expected to see humans fail. They expected to see proof of everything they believed. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The footage continued on the massive screen. The wandering light descended through thin clouds of dust and settled onto the gray surface of the moon. Through the ship's windows, the landscape looked dead and empty. Rocks and craters stretched to the horizon under a black sky filled with distant stars. Captain's voice came through the speakers. All survey teams prepare for deployment. We have detected an unusual structure approximately 2 kilometers beneath the surface. A natural cave system appears to provide access. In the viewing hall, the cadets watched with mild interest. Survey missions were common. They rarely produced anything exciting. On the screen, the landing party assembled near the ship's exit ramp. There were 12 coalition personnel in total, 4 including the captain, 3 scientists, 2 security officers, and 3 humans. Danny Cole checked his equipment one final time. He carried only a standard sidearm and a small pack of supplies. Maria Vance stood beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon. Marsh adjusted the medical kit on his back. A scientist approached them. You humans should stay close to the group, she said. This environment may be too harsh for your species. Maria Vance smiled politely. We appreciate your concern. The scientist nodded and walked away, satisfied that she had done her duty. Danny leaned close to his companions. Stay alert, he said quietly. Something about this feels wrong. Agreed, Maria replied. The readings the ship detected were too regular, too precise. That is not natural. Nodded, I have a bad feeling about this. But they were only observers. They had no authority to stop the mission. All they could do was follow and watch. The landing party moved across the rocky surface toward a dark opening in the ground. The cave entrance was large enough for them to enter without ducking. The walls inside were smooth, almost polished. This was strange for a natural formation. Captain led the way, his heavy footsteps echoing in the darkness. The team activated their helmet lights, creating circles of white brightness in the black void around them. They walked for nearly an hour, descending deeper and deeper into the moon. The air grew colder. The walls changed from natural rock to something else, something that looked like metal mixed with stone. One of the scientists stopped to examine the wall. "This is remarkable," she said. "This material is not natural. Someone built this." "How old is it?" Captain asked. The scientist ran her scanner across the surface. Her face went pale. "According to these readings, this structure is over 50,000 years old." The cadets in the viewing hall leaned forward in their seats. Ancient alien structures were rare, valuable, dangerous. On the screen, the landing party continued forward. They entered a massive chamber that opened up around them like the inside of a cathedral. The ceiling was so high that their lights could not reach it. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing faintly with a blue light that seemed to come from within the material itself. "Incredible," Captain breathed. "This is a major discovery. Begin recording everything." The scientists spread out, their scanners humming as they documented the chamber. The security officers stood guard near the entrance, their weapons ready but not raised. Danny Cole walked slowly along one wall, studying the symbols. His eyes narrowed. "Captain," he said, "these symbols are changing." "Turn to look. What do you mean?" "They were static when we entered. Now they are moving, shifting, like they are responding to our presence." The captain made a dismissive sound. "The humans are seeing things. This structure has been abandoned for 50,000 years. There is nothing here but dust and old technology." Danny did not argue, but he quietly moved closer to Maria and he the holster of his sidearm. Maria noticed and did the same, shifted his medical kit to a more accessible position. Then the floor began to vibrate. The blue symbols on the walls flashed brighter. A deep humming sound filled the chamber, growing louder with each second. The scientists stopped their work and looked around in confusion. "What is happening?" one of them asked. The answer came from the darkness above. Something dropped from the ceiling. It landed in the center of the chamber with a crash that shook the floor. The helmet lights illuminated a shape that made no sense. It was made of metal and something that looked like flesh. It had too many limbs, too many eyes. It moved with a speed that should have been impossible for something so large. For one terrible moment, everyone froze. Then the creature attacked. It struck the nearest scientist with one of its limbs. She flew across the chamber and hit the wall with a sound that the cadets in the viewing hall would never forget. She did not get up. More creatures dropped from above. 5, 10, 20. They swarmed from openings in the walls that had not been there moments before. Captain stood motionless. His species was known for careful analysis, for taking time to consider every option before acting. In normal situations, this was a strength. In combat, it was death. A security officer opened fire. His shot struck one of the creatures but did not stop it. The creature tore him apart in seconds. Screams filled the chamber. Scientists ran in every direction. More creatures emerged from the darkness. Danny Cole did not freeze. Danny Cole did not run. Danny Cole drew his weapon and fired 3 shots into the nearest creature's center mass. The creature staggered. "Everyone behind cover now," Danny shouted. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Maria, establish a firing line. Get the wounded to safety. Move, move, move." He grabbed Captain by the arm and pulled him behind a fallen pillar. The captain stared at him with wide eyes, still unable to process what was happening. "Stay here," Danny said. "Do not move." Then he turned and ran back into the chaos. In the viewing hall, watched with his mouth hanging open. His 4 eyes were fixed on the small human figure moving through the carnage on the screen. This was not what he had expected. This was not what any of them had expected. The footage showed pure chaos. Creatures made of metal and flesh swarmed through the ancient chamber. Coalition personnel screamed and ran and died. Blue emergency lights flickered across walls covered in strange symbols. And in the middle of it all stood three humans. Danny Cole moved like water through the darkness. He never stopped, never hesitated. His sidearm barked again and again, each shot finding its target. When one creature got too close, he ducked under its swinging limb and fired directly into what might have been its head. Maria Vance had positioned herself near a natural between two fallen pillars. She grabbed a Fallen's pulse rifle and opened fire on the creatures trying to push through. Her face showed no fear, only focus. "Keep them bottled up," she shouted. "Danny, get the survivors to my position." Danny was already moving. He found a scientist crouched behind a rock, paralyzed with terror. Danny grabbed his arm and pulled. "Get up," he said. "Move to Maria now." The stared at him with huge eyes. "We are going to die." "Not today," Danny replied. "Move." Something in his voice made the obey. He stumbled toward Maria's position while Danny provided cover fire. Across the chamber, Marsh was performing miracles. A female lay on the ground, her green blood pooling beneath her. Two of her limbs had been torn away by a creature. She was going into shock. Dropped to his knees beside her and opened his medical kit. His hands moved with a speed and precision that seemed impossible in such conditions. "Look at me," he said to the, "What is your name?" She gasped, "My name is—" I am going to save your life, but I need you to stay awake. Can you do that for me?" She nodded weakly. Tied tourniquets around her wounds using strips torn from his own uniform. He injected her with painkillers from his kit. All around him, the battle raged, but his hands never shook. "Tell me about your family," said as he worked. "Do you have family?" "A daughter," whispered. "She is 7 years old." "What is her name?" "That is a beautiful name. You are going to see again, I promise you." In the viewing hall, the cadet felt something cold move through her chest. The on the screen could have been her mother, her aunt, her friend. And this human, this small and fragile human, was keeping her alive through sheer force of will. The footage continued. Time stamps in the corner showed that hours were passing. The creatures kept coming. The ammunition ran low. The survivors huddled together in a defensive circle while the three humans held the perimeter. Maria Vance's pulse rifle overheated for the second time. She threw it aside and picked up an alien weapon she had never trained with. She figured out how to use it in seconds and kept firing. Danny Cole took a hit to his shoulder. The footage showed the wound clearly. Blood soaked through his uniform. He did not stop fighting. He switched his weapon to his other hand and kept moving. "Danny, you are injured," Maria called out. "I noticed," he replied. "You should look at it." "Is busy, I am fine." He was not fine. Anyone could see that he was not fine, but he kept fighting. An hour later, a creature broke through the perimeter. It headed straight for the huddle of survivors. Captain finally moved, but he moved too slowly. The creature was going to reach them. Maria Vance threw herself in front of a wounded scientist. The creature's attack hit her instead. The impact threw her 3 meters through the air. She hit the ground hard. For a moment she did not move. Then she pushed herself up, grabbed a piece of broken metal from the floor, and stabbed the creature through what might have been its eye. It collapsed. Maria limped back to her position and picked up her weapon. Her side was bleeding. She did not mention it. Maria shouted, "You need medical attention." Later, she said, "Keep them alive." The footage showed the hours passing. The cadets in the viewing hall sat in complete silence. No one whispered. No one moved. They watched as 3 humans did the impossible. Danny Cole killed 47 creatures by himself. The footage tracked his ammunition count. When he ran out, he used his knife. When his knife broke, he used his hands. When his hands were broken, he picked up rocks. Maria Vance took 17 separate wounds during the 6-hour battle. She never stopped fighting. She never stopped protecting the survivors behind her. Marsh saved 9 lives. He performed 3 emergency surgeries in a combat zone. He talked to each patient constantly, keeping them calm, keeping them focused, keeping them alive. When the rescue team finally arrived, they found the 3 humans still standing guard over the survivors. The creatures had stopped coming. The ancient defense system had finally exhausted itself. Danny Cole turned to face the rescue team. His face was covered in blood. His arm hung at a wrong angle. His eyes were hollow with exhaustion. "About time," he said. Then his legs gave out and he collapsed. Maria caught him before he hit the ground, was already moving toward them with his medical kit. The rescue team stood frozen, staring at the scene before them. Dozens of dead creatures, terrified survivors, and 3 humans who had held the line for 6 hours against an enemy that should have killed them all in minutes. The footage ended. In the viewing hall, no one spoke, stared at the blank screen with an expression that might have been shame, had tears running down her scaled face. Senior Commander stepped forward. "Now," he said quietly, "perhaps you would like to know why the humans were really banned from this academy." The lights in the viewing hall came up slowly. 300 alien cadets sat in stunned silence. Some of them had tears on their faces. Others looked sick. A few stared at their hands as if seeing them for the first time. Senior Commander stood before the blank screen, his aged face showing no emotion. He waited until every eye in the room was focused on him. "You have questions," he said. It was not a question. Raised his hand. His voice came out rough and uncertain. "What happened to them, the humans, after the rescue?" Nodded slowly. "Sergeant Danny Cole spent 4 weeks in critical care. The damage to his shoulder required 3 separate surgeries. He nearly lost his arm. The doctors said he should have collapsed from blood loss within the first hour of the fight. He fought for 6. The cadets shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Specialist Maria Vance suffered 17 distinct injuries during the battle. Broken ribs, internal bleeding, deep lacerations across her back and side. She refused sedation until she had personally confirmed that every survivor was receiving medical treatment. Paused. Medic First Class Marsh collapsed from blood loss exactly 43 seconds after the rescue team took control of the situation. He had been bleeding from a wound in his leg for over 3 hours. He never mentioned it. He never stopped working. Raised her hand, her voice trembled. "How did they survive? How is any of that possible?" "That," said, "is the question that terrified the Coalition High Command." He pressed a button on his control pad. A document appeared on the screen behind him. It was stamped with Coalition security seals and marked as classified. After the incident, a full investigation was conducted. The Coalition studied the footage. They analyzed every moment. They brought in experts on human biology and psychology. They wanted to understand what they had witnessed. Turned to look at the document. What they found disturbed them greatly. He began to read from the report. Humans possess an unusual ability to function under extreme stress. When faced with life-threatening situations, their bodies release a chemical mixture that suppresses pain, increases strength, and enhances focus. They call this response the fight-or-flight reflex, but humans have evolved a third option that most species do not possess. He looked back at the cadets. They can choose to fight when flight is the only logical option. They can override their survival instincts and run toward danger instead of away from it. They can sacrifice themselves for others without hesitation. They spoke up, "But that sounds like a weakness, a malfunction." "That is what the Coalition thought at first," replied. "They assumed the humans were simply broken, defective, unable to properly assess threats." He shook his head. They were wrong. The humans knew exactly what they were doing. They understood they were outmatched. They understood they would probably die. They fought anyway. not because they failed to recognize the danger, but because they refused to abandon the others. The room was completely silent. The coalition conducted further research into human history. What they discovered was even more troubling. Humans have been fighting for their survival since they first appeared on their world. They lived alongside predators that were faster, stronger, and deadlier. They survived ice ages and famines and disasters that should have wiped them out. His voice grew heavier. They survived because they learned to protect each other. They developed pack bonds that transcended logic. They would die for their families, for their friends, for complete strangers who needed help. This trait is not a weakness. It is their greatest weapon. Spoke again. His arrogance was completely gone. Then why were they banned? If they are so valuable in combat, why would the coalition push them away? Was quiet for a long moment. Because the coalition was afraid. He let that word hang in the air. The High Command watched this footage. They saw what 3 untrained human observers could do against an enemy that had killed experienced coalition soldiers in seconds. They imagined what would happen if humans received proper military training, if they gained access to advanced weapons, if they learned our tactics and strategies. He pressed another button. A new document appeared on the screen. This is the original recommendation from the Security Council. It states that humans represent a potential existential threat to the coalition, not because they are hostile, but because they are too capable, too adaptable, too willing to do whatever is necessary to protect those they consider their own. Turned back to face the cadets. The ban was never about human failure. The humans did not fail. They succeeded beyond anything the coalition thought possible. The ban was about fear. The coalition was afraid of what humans might become. They were afraid that someday, humans might turn that incredible survival instinct against the coalition itself. Stood up from her seat. Her voice was stronger now. That is cowardice. We excluded an ally because we were afraid of how good they were. Looked at her with something that might have been approval. Yes, it was cowardice, and it was a mistake. What do you mean? She asked. The galaxy is changing. New threats are emerging. The coalition needs every capable species it can find. 2 years ago, the High Command made a decision based on fear. Last month, they made a different decision. He walked toward the door of the viewing hall. The ban has been lifted. Humans have been invited to return to this academy, not as observers this time. He placed his hand on the door controls. They have been invited as instructors. The door slid open. 3 figures stood in the hallway beyond. The cadets recognized them immediately from the footage. Danny Cole, Maria Vance, Marsh. They were older now, but they stood tall in coalition instructor uniforms. Danny Cole stepped forward into the viewing hall. His eyes swept across the rows of young faces. He had watched this same footage before agreeing to return. He knew what these cadets had just seen. "Good morning," he said. His voice was calm and steady. "I understand some of you had questions about humans." He smiled slightly. "I am happy to answer them." Danny Cole stood at the front of the viewing hall, flanked by Maria Vance and Marsh. 300 alien cadets stared at them in complete silence. The footage they had just watched played behind their eyes. The blood, the screaming, the impossible courage. And now the heroes of that footage stood before them in the flesh. Danny let the silence stretch. He understood its weight. These cadets had spent years believing humans were weak, fragile, inferior. That belief had been shattered in the span of 2 hours. They needed time to rebuild their understanding of the universe. Was the first to move. He stood from his seat slowly, his 4 eyes fixed on Danny's face. The arrogance that had defined him was gone. In its place was something new, something that looked like respect. He walked down the steps between the rows of seats until he stood before the 3 humans. Then he did something that made every cadet in the room gasp. He dropped to one knee and bowed his head. "I owe you an apology," said. His voice carried through the silent hall. "I mocked your species. I called you weak. I laughed at your exclusion from this academy. I was wrong. I was ignorant and foolish, and I ask for your forgiveness." Danny looked down at the young. He remembered being young and arrogant once. He remembered learning hard lessons about the universe. "Stand up," Danny said. Looked up with uncertainty. "Stand up," Danny repeated. "Warriors do not kneel to other warriors. We stand together as equals." Rose to his feet. His eyes met Danny's. "You made a mistake," Danny said. "You judged us without understanding us. That is something all species do. The question is not whether you made an error. The question is what you will do now that you know the truth." "I want to learn," said. "I want you to teach me what humans know about survival, about protecting others, about refusing to give up." Maria Vance stepped forward. The scars on her arms were visible below her uniform sleeves. "That is exactly why we are here. Not to punish you for your ignorance. Not to prove that we are better than you. We are here because the galaxy needs warriors who understand what it truly means to fight." Marsh nodded. "Fighting is not about strength or speed or superior weapons. Fighting is about choosing to stand between those you protect and those who would harm them. It is about refusing to stop even when everything tells you to give up." The other cadets began to rise from their seats. One by one they walked down to stand near. Was among them, her green scales catching the light as she moved. She stopped in front of the "You saved in that footage. Do you know what happened to her?" Smiled softly. "She recovered fully. She returned to active duty 6 months later. Last I heard, she was serving as a medical officer on a coalition cruiser." His eyes filled with tears. "She has a daughter." Said, "I remember. Sends me a message every year on the anniversary of the incident. She tells me about progress in school. She is doing well." A cadet pushed through the crowd. He was young, barely past his first growth cycle. "How do you do it?" he asked. "How do you fight through the fear? My species freezes when danger comes too fast. How do humans keep moving?" Danny considered the question carefully. "We feel fear. Every human feels fear. The difference is that we have learned to act despite it. Fear is not our enemy. Hesitation is. When something threatens those we care about, we do not wait for the fear to pass. We move through it." He looked around at the assembled cadets. "This is what we will teach you. Not how to eliminate fear. That is impossible. We will teach you how to function within it. How to make decisions when your body is screaming at you to run. How to protect others when every instinct tells you to protect yourself." Senior Commander spoke from the doorway. "The first training session begins tomorrow at dawn. I suggest you all get some rest. Human training methods are demanding." Maria smiled at that. "We will start with basic endurance exercises. 5-kilometer run through rough terrain, then hand-to-hand combat fundamentals, then tactical scenarios under simulated stress conditions." Several cadets exchanged nervous glances. "Do not worry," Danny said. "We will not break you. We will build you into something stronger than you ever thought possible." The cadets dispersed slowly, talking among themselves in hushed tones. The world they thought they knew had changed. Everything they believed about humans had been proven wrong. But instead of feeling threatened, most of them felt something unexpected. Hope. As the viewing hall emptied, the 3 humans remained. Senior Commander joined them, standing beside Danny as they watched the last cadets leave. "That went better than I expected," said. "They are young," Danny replied. "Young minds can change. It is the old ones that get stuck in their ways." Maria looked out the window at the purple sunset spreading across the sky of Prime. "Do you think we can really make a difference here? 3 humans trying to change how an entire galaxy thinks about our species." Put his hand on her shoulder. "We changed 9 lives in that cave. 9 survivors who went home to their families because we refused to give up. If we can change even one mind here, it will be worth it. Danny nodded slowly. The galaxy is full of threats we have not even discovered yet. Ancient weapons, hostile species, dangers that make those creatures in the cave look like nothing. The coalition cannot face those threats alone. They need allies who understand what it means to fight for survival. He turned to face his companions. That is what humans have always done. We fight, we survive, we protect each other, and now we will teach others to do the same. The sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. In the distance, the sounds of cadets preparing for tomorrow's training drifted across the academy grounds. Maria broke the silence. The cadets have potential. I can see it in some of them. Danny nodded. Everyone has potential. They just need someone to show them what they are capable of. Looked out at the darkening sky. I hope they never have to learn the way we did, in blood and fire and desperation. That is why we are here, Danny said, so they can learn in training what we learned in combat, so when their moment comes they will be ready. The three humans stood together in comfortable silence, three survivors who had become teachers. Behind them, the screen where their story had played was dark now, but the impact of that story would ripple through the academy for generations. They had come to this place as mocked outsiders. They would leave it as legends. And somewhere in the dormitories of the military academy, 300 alien cadets lay awake in their beds, thinking about what they had witnessed, thinking about what they had learned, thinking about the three small, fragile, impossible humans who had refused to give up. Tomorrow, they would begin their training. Tomorrow, they would learn what it truly meant to be warriors. And the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again.